You know that feeling, right? You're completely stuck on a problem, just hitting your head against a wall. And then, later, when you're in the shower or out for a walk, the perfect solution just pops into your head. That aha moment has a name, and a pretty wild 2,000-year-old origin story. It all starts with a brilliant mathematician running naked through the streets of ancient Greece, shouting one of the most famous words in history: Eureka! Now, that legendary moment? It's way more than just a funny story from history class. It's actually a kind of secret blueprint for how our own minds solve our toughest problems. So what we're really going to dig into is this. What can an ancient story about a golden crown really teach us about unlocking our own best ideas? All right, so let's jump back in time. We're in the 3rd century BC, in the bustling Greek city of Syracuse. And this is the home of one of the greatest minds of the ancient world, Archimedes. Okay, so the local king, a guy named Hero II, has a bit of a problem. He's just had this beautiful, heavy crown made, supposedly from pure gold. He weighed it, and sure enough, the weight was right. But he had this nagging feeling the goldsmith had cheated him, swapping out some of that precious gold for cheaper silver and just pocketing the difference. And here's the kicker. The crown was a sacred object, dedicated to the gods. So King Hero couldn't just melt it down to see what it was made of. He needed proof, but the crown had to stay absolutely perfect, completely unharmed. So who do you call? He turns to the smartest person he knows, Archimedes. And Archimedes? Well, he was totally stumped. He obsessed over it, turning the problem over and over in his mind, but he just couldn't find a way in. I mean, how do you measure the volume of a weird, complex shape like a crown without destroying it? He'd hit a complete wall. A frustration I think we've all felt. And then the bath. In a moment where he wasn't even trying to solve the problem, he steps into his tub and he sees the water level rise and spill over the edge, and suddenly, bam, it all clicked into place. The answer wasn't about weight, it was about volume. He realized that a super dense metal like gold would push aside less water than a lighter metal like silver, even if they weighed the same. It was this brilliantly simple solution to a really complex problem. And just like that, he could prove the fraud without leaving a single scratch. And yeah, the legend says the goldsmith did not have a good day. But hold on, because here's where the story takes a really fascinating turn. Some historians think this whole famous legend might just be the result of a historical game of telephone. The real mystery Archimedes solved might not have been about a crown at all. It might all boil down to 2 words that sound really similar. In Latin, the word for crown is corona. But in Greek, there's a word koron, which means keel, the huge structural backbone of a ship. So it's possible the real problem he was losing sleep over wasn't a little golden crown, but something way, way bigger. Figuring out if this colossal warship he was building would actually float. And this makes a lot of sense when you think about how stories change over time. The first person to actually write this story down was a Roman writer named Vitruvius, and he wrote it almost 200 years after Archimedes lived. It's pretty easy to see how over 2 centuries of people telling and retelling this story, the technical tale of a ship's keel could slowly morph into the much more dramatic, juicy story of a cheating goldsmith and a golden crown. But you know what? Whether it was a crown or a keel, the heart of this story is exactly the same. It's about that sudden, powerful spark of insight. So let's shift from the historical mystery to the one that's happening inside our own heads. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it the Eureka effect, or just insight. It's that feeling we all get when the answer to something we've been wrestling with suddenly becomes crystal clear, almost like it just fell out of the sky. And these moments almost always follow a very specific pattern. First, there's the wall, the impasse, where you just feel completely and utterly stuck. Then, out of nowhere, comes the insight. That's followed by that amazing rush of joy, the eureka feeling. And finally, this deep, unshakable certainty that, yep, you've got it, that's the answer. So, how do we get more of that? How do we find that spark? Well, and this is going to sound a little strange, the answer seems to lie in the power of doing nothing. It's all about what your brain is up to when you're not trying to do anything at all. You can kind of think of your brain as having 2 main operating modes. You've got your focused mode. That's when you're concentrating, you're analyzing, you're really trying hard to solve something. But then there's your wandering mode. This is what kicks in when you're relaxing or taking a walk or daydreaming. It's run by a totally different system in your brain called the default mode network. And here is a huge insight from modern neuroscience. Real creativity isn't about just forcing yourself to focus harder, and it's not about just aimlessly daydreaming either. It's about the dance between the two. The most creative people have brains that are just fantastic at getting these two different networks to talk to each other and cooperate. In fact, neuroscientist Nancy Andreasen has a perfect acronym for what our brain does in this wandering state: REST, which stands for Random Episodic Silent Thinking. This is what's happening when you think your brain is off. It's quietly sorting through your memories, making new connections between old ideas. It's not resting at all. It's secretly solving problems in the background. And this reveals this really clear two-part recipe for our own breakthroughs. Step 1 is preparation. You have to do the hard work. You have to immerse yourself in the problem, struggle with it, and really load up your brain with all the information. But then, and this is the part we always forget, comes incubation. You have to consciously step away and let go. That's what gives your brain the space it needs to start making those surprising, brilliant connections. Okay, so let's bring all this home. How can we take this ancient story and all this cool new science and actually apply it to the challenges in our own lives? It really comes down to a simple rhythm. First, do the hard work. Dive in, wrestle with the problem. But the moment you feel yourself hitting that wall, the most productive thing you can do is stop. Seriously, step away. Go for a walk, listen to some music, do the dishes. Give your brain a real break. And then just stay open. The breakthrough will find you in that quiet space between the effort and the ease. And here's the big takeaway. In our culture that's all about hustle and being on all the time, we tend to think of downtime as wasted time. But it is the exact opposite. It is an active, essential part of the creative process. It's like the silent workbench, where all that focused effort you put in finally gets assembled into something amazing. So I'll just leave you with this thought. Think about a challenge you're stuck on right now. What amazing breakthrough might just be waiting for you if only you gave yourself permission to step away?